Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited about today's episode because we have a very special guest with us. This is a woman who is working so hard behind the scenes, and yet no one ever really gets to see her face or know that they're hearing from her because she is the copywriter for the School of Self-Image, Jamie Palko. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so
I
excited to have you.
I am excited to be here, and I really have to say it's very much a full circle moment for me, because I can remember the first time I ever learned about you or heard about the School of Self-Image was like on this podcast, and I can remember sitting at my kitchen counter eating lunch with my lit candle and listening to episodes. So to be here is very exciting and special. And thanks for this opportunity.
Welcome to the School of Self-Image, where personal development meets style. Here's your hostess, Master Life Coach, Tonya Leigh.
I'm so happy we found each other. That's how I
I
feel.
know.
It's crazy
Yes,
how the world works. So
it
fun.
really is. It's totally true. But I feel like I did a little bit of wordsmithing to help make this happen. So
Oh, well, that's what we're
it's
talking about today. So that's
yeah, it's very cool. So I joined the team last year.
Mhm.
Towards the end of last year. And earlier in the year, I had made the decision that I wanted to come back to copywriting. And, I was very much like of the mindset, like, I'm going to write this down. This is going to be my goal. And I want to get back to copywriting. And so I wrote that down. I think it was like February or March of last year that I wanted to get back into copywriting. And um, it remained top of mind for me. So then when I saw that you were hiring, it was like, oh yeah, well, obviously this is it. And obviously I'm going to get this job. And I did. So I really do feel like those words that I spoke to myself and like wrote that down and really sort of lived and breathed those for those couple of months made this happen. So I'm
That
excited we got
is the
together too.
power of words, which is
Yeah,
what this episode is all about.
it is.
So fun. So before we jump into the power of words, I think some people may be curious what it's like to be a copywriter and maybe more specifically, a copywriter for the School of Self-Image. So can you just give us a little day-to-day of what your life is like as a copywriter?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely different being a copywriter for the School of Self-Image than it is, in my previous experience as a copywriter. I worked previously for QVC and I was a copywriter for them. And that really is, writing and selling stuff every day, a bracelet, a computer, a potware set. Um, so here, what I think is just really cool is that my days look different every single day of the week. I say I'm a copywriter, but I also feel like a content writer because I do get to support um, the School of Self-Image and the members and the lessons and your teachings. And so that's really cool and special and something that's different. Because I think when people think copywriting, they think of selling things. Um, so yeah, my days look different depending on what I'm working on, what we're working on. I think this is a much more collaborative environment than anything that I've worked in before, in the writing sphere. So we could be in a meeting talking about, a program that we're working on or we could be developing something for social media. We could be talking about things going on in the membership. So day to day, I am at my computer and writing. I do find that sometimes my best work is like if I'm out and taking a walk. So you'll often see me on Slack saying out for a walk. And that's where I can
Which we
really,
encourage.
yes, and I appreciate because that's where I get my wheels spinning. I'm on the notes on my phone, speaking stuff and writing it down so that I remember it when I come back and sit down. So it's just been really fun and exciting and different. Um, yeah, and every day I just, have something different to look forward to, which was really exciting and helps to keep that creativity fresh. And me really invested in, what we're talking about, what's going on in the community. And I think that helps for me, a lot.
Yeah. I feel like of everybody on the team, you're probably the one that gets whiplash the most because Jamie will be working on project A and then project B will come up that feels urgent and we throw it to her. And I'm sure this could be a whole different podcast, but your ability to transition from one thing to another is unparalleled. It's like so, it's a gift and I appreciate it so much. And you're always willing. You're always willing. I think when you came on, you know, the job title was copywriter. And I
Yeah.
think you so beautifully said it. It's more about just creating content for members, for potential members. So you're so gifted and we love having you. And when I was thinking about this episode, I had planned originally to do it just by myself. And then I thought, no, I need the queen of words to come onto the podcast with me because you are dealing with words every single day, not only for the School of Self-Image, but in your own life. And I'm really curious to hear from you. Do you have an example of how the power of words has actually changed your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's really cool and interesting about this job, and I said, it is so different than previous copywriting jobs that I've had, is that like I am in it with the team and I get to see like what goes on behind the scenes with our members. And so I really get to experience what they're excited about and what they're doing and what they're accomplishing. And yeah, it's really just cool to see how their words can completely, transform themselves. And, when I sat and thought about like what word has really changed my life, one thing immediately popped into mind. And anyone who, has been in this sphere for any amount of time or like is a member, I really don't think that they'll be surprised to hear that it is I am. Right?
Mhm.
So you say all the time, those are the two most powerful words. So yes, it is two words. So I hope that you'll give me a pass on that. But it really has changed my life, how I show up. And I can give you an example, right? I was into journaling, before I started. And when I started, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna get into journaling more because like that's the vibe here and I'm here for it. But until I really started to get into like the journaling practice that we do in the School of Self-Image, so like the daily five, I would say things like, I want to read more, or I want to stop drinking so much coffee and drink more water,
Mhm.
things like that. So really, I was in that energy of like wishful thinking. This is nice in the future.
Hmm.
Um, and it felt good. It felt positive. It felt like something I should say. Um, should, and we can
Mhm.
probably get to that. But nothing was happening, right? I would just say that, and I didn't have those results that I was looking for, and I just was feeling like, oh, this isn't working out. So when I really dove deep into the daily five, and I'm like, okay, I am going to do it like it's written, and I am going to go all in here. Then instead of like, I want to up level my life, that was like a generic, all of those things were sort of leading to like wanting to up level my life. Um, then I decided that I was going to have an I am statement that supported that. So I wrote this down. It is I am constantly up leveling my life through my thoughts and daily goals to create and live a life I love. So I shifted from like that want to am, and that really was sort of the change, the light bulb moment for me. Because instead of it being in my future, something I was hoping for, it became present, and then I became an active participant in it. Um, and then I started to see the results, right? So it was like concrete. I had been wanting to do it for so long, and my Apple Watch rings were like, girl, you ain't moving. What's happening? You know what I mean? And
You're like,
then
but I want to.
I want to, like,
That is actually, let's talk about that for a moment.
yeah,
That is such a powerful example because I want to seems like a positive statement.
yeah,
It seems like, oh, I'm doing something, I'm wanting, but when you're wanting, you're not having, you're not being. I love how you said it. It's still in the future. It's something out there versus I am working towards, I am practicing. Because I think maybe it's hard for people to go immediately to already being there. Like, I am a woman who drinks 8 glasses of water every day, and you have so much evidence that you haven't. But just replacing I want to drink 8 glasses of water to I am practicing drinking 8 glasses of water.
Yeah.
That is actually a really powerful reframe.
Yeah. And it's not, toxic positivity or like anything like that, right?
Mhm.
I'm not like gaslighting myself in a way like that. It's true. I am up leveling my life. Like if I'm drinking 2 huge mugs of coffee, and you've been on a meeting with me, you know how big my coffee mugs are. If I'm drinking 2 huge mugs and I'm drinking a small little glass of water, and then I am drinking 2 small glasses of water, like I am up leveling my life. Have I hit a gallon of water a day? No, but it's true. I am doing that. I am taking those steps. And it felt less like those to-dos that I wasn't feeling so bogged down by them, and I wasn't feeling like I was tricking myself or fooling myself. And it
Yeah.
was able to let me visualize and see and celebrate those small things.
Mhm.
If I walk 9,000 steps a day instead of 10,000, like that's way more than it was back in, March when it was 3,000 a day. And so that was helpful. I mean, that it really did change everything. I like I said, I hit 10,000 steps a day pretty regularly. I'm one book away from reading 50 books this year, which I feel is
What? That's
very
awesome.
impressive. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I
What's been your
think,
favorite book so far this year?
oh, this year I got really into like fantasy books this year. So I read that A Court of Thorns and Roses, and that's a whole big series. So some of
Oh.
those books were 900 pages, which uh that's a dedication, but those were really cool and different and something um sort of that surprised me this year.
Yeah.
Uh yeah,
You know,
Lori,
going back to words, like I think it's important to acknowledge that words carry energy. Like,
yes.
why are we even talking about this? Like, words carry energy because of the meaning that we attach to the word. And one of the things I think when you've been doing mindset work for as long as I have been, you can think, oh, what else is there to learn? Well, we have human brains, and our brains are always spouting out the most ridiculous things to us.
Yeah.
But I just taught the class for next month for the membership, and we're talking about mindful excellence. And for the members who have been doing this work for a while, I was like, I want you all to pay attention even to the details of your sentences, because that's what thoughts are. It's just a collection of words that we give meaning to, and the meaning can, give us energy and fill us with positivity and help us
Yeah.
take great action, or it can do the opposite. And one of the examples that I gave is I was with Fonz last year or 2 years ago when we were in Denver. So probably 2 years ago. And I'll never forget, it was a period where we had a lot going on, which turns out we always have a lot of stuff going on. And I remember being in the car with him and saying, I have so much to do. And he said, let's just take so much out of this sentence.
Yeah.
And I replaced it with, I have things to do. It seems so
Mhm.
minor, but I guess that's an adverb, right? So much would be an adverb. I think so.
Your guess
Anyway,
is as good as mine.
it's like an intensifier, right?
Yes,
It's like
for
it's
sure.
adding like a quantity that freaked my body out, and just removing so much to I have things to do instantly brought me relief. 2 little words, so much,
Right.
just deleting them gave me so much relief. And I was even thinking about how sometimes we are like, oh, I'm having such a bad day, or I'm having such a frustrating day. What if we just took the adjectives out and we're just like, we're
Right.
having a day?
Having a day.
It's
Yeah.
like makes you feel so much better, or even maybe it just gives you a little relief in
Right.
the moment.
Yeah, I think it does something to your brain. Like you don't have that attachment to that word. Like I'm so busy. I'm very mindful of saying that like in the copy that I use, in the membership, like let's say I'm sending out like we're sending out a newsletter, right? And I'm like, oh, it's the busy holiday season. And then I'm like, well, do I really want to to tell people it's busy? Like, what is that feeling that someone who is reading that is going to have?
Well,
Is it,
that's like, have you
yeah,
heard of the Pygmalion effect?
no, tell me more.
So basically, the Pygmalion effect is this phenomena in which when you set expectations for people, higher expectations, they'll live into it. And that's
Yes.
really interesting. I wasn't planning to talk about this, but like even like the words you speak to other people,
Yeah.
how that affects them if they're not super mindful, super aware. And it makes me think about when Sarah, my daughter, she was probably about 8. I had gone to this mastermind and she had been doing very poorly in math. And I'll never forget her calling me while I was at this mastermind and she was about to go in to take a math test. And she was so nervous and she was so afraid. And I spoke to her at the level of where she was, right? I got
Yeah.
nervous and afraid with her.
Right.
And I'll never forget talking about it with my mastermind. And this older woman who had children, she pulled me into the bathroom. She was like, I want you to notice how you're seeing Sarah as if she's in a small pot. You've planted her in this small pot, and you need to plant her in the forest and let her
Wow.
grow with the words you use.
Yeah.
And so I remember calling her back and saying, listen, babe, you are going to do amazing on this test. Like you've studied, you've worked hard, like you are going to do great on this test. And even if you don't, it's okay. You're going to learn. Right. And
Right.
I just, with my words, set a whole new expectation for her. And she ended up acing that test.
That's
And I was
awesome.
like, the words we use with other people. I love that you think about that when you're writing copy.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you brought that up because I had a very similar experience with my son a couple of weeks back. He's playing football this year and they have their playoff game, and so they were in the playoffs and he came to me and he's like, "Do you think I have anxiety?" Because I just get really nervous, before my games. And, we talked about it and I could tell that it wasn't like it was nervous, but he just had picked up that word anxiety from somewhere and he was telling himself that, right? And he wouldn't eat before games, which isn't great for his performance. And he was really like withdrawn and forgetful and, all sorts of things. It was really impacting him leading up to it. And so we sort of had that conversation and I said, it really sounds to me like, some nervousness, but also like it sounds to me like you're excited. You're excited for the game and you have the
Mm,
butterflies and the pounding heart. And to me, yeah, like you could say that you're nervous, but we could also say that you're excited. And so then even whenever we were talking to him, like instead of you nervous about the game, like, are you excited about the game? And we decided, let's talk to him in that way and frame his feelings in that way for him. And yeah, I mean, it really has been a world of difference in how he's showing up, um, his demeanor beforehand. So it is really cool. And I do think that that's something that, I love to be able to give, especially I have 3 boys. So,
mhm.
and I think, there's not a lot of feelings talk all the time. And, definitely this mindset work isn't something that, we teach kids growing up, but I'm so grateful that I know it and can, in a way, like help
Yeah.
them start to see those things for themselves and change the way that they talk to themselves, they see situations, so that hopefully in the future, right, they can go forward and just like benefit from that as they grow up. But I love that visual, right, of like planting Sarah in a small pot versus like out in the forest. So
But I
good.
think about how we do that to ourselves. And I think the way we do it is we look around at what has been, and that becomes our
Yeah.
expectation of ourselves. So we can't outgrow what has been. And then we speak from that level.
Yeah.
We look at it, and the words we use mirror where we are right now. And one of the classes is in the membership, and it's a really powerful class. I don't know if you've looked at it, but it's speaking from your future. Like, how would your future
Yeah.
self speak about this? What would your
Yeah.
future self tell you right now that will help you meet her in the future? And that all comes down to a collection of the words that we use
Yeah.
or against ourselves. And so often I think we subconsciously speak against ourselves. I don't think we mean to.
No.
We just do it by default. We just keep repeating the same words over and over and over. I think one of the most well, let me ask you, what do you think one of the most overused words for women are?
I really like, I come back to it should, right? I come back to
Mm,
should. And that to me feels like it feels stifling. Or have to, like those
yeah.
things. Like I have to maintain my weight, or like I have to have a sparkling house, or those kind of things. Like that to me feels like it really it prevents me from going out and expanding and seeing what's possible for myself. Um, yeah, and I think I don't know if you and Laura both say it, but like stop shooting all over yourself. For sure. So
Mhm.
that would be my pick. What do you think?
That's so good.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's a word I hear a lot, and I've often used it in the past, and I just stopped saying it is overwhelmed. I'm
Mm,
overwhelmed, overwhelmed, overwhelmed. And have you all noticed, like, the more we tell ourselves we're overwhelmed, the more overwhelm we
yeah,
experience. You cannot take enough action to get you out of a state of overwhelm.
right. Well, I think what's interesting too is because and you talk about this a lot, is like you're looking for that evidence then. And that's what you'll see, right? When you tell yourself, I'm overwhelmed, I'm so busy, you're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I have to run my kids here, or I have, 3 meetings, and then you're finding that evidence. Like, can you tell yourself, I'm working on like work-life balance. And then you'll find those examples of where you're doing that. I get to go and take a walk, and think about what's gonna be needed from me for this particular project. So yeah, I think that it really, because it sort of like laser beams you to finding those pieces of evidence of that thing that you're telling yourself all the time in your life, for sure.
Yeah. It's the reticular activating system.
Yes.
It's doing its job all day, every day. Or if we want to get spiritual, I guess you could say it's like Rumi, what you seek is seeking you.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of times we're subconsciously seeking the very things we don't want with those two words, like I am overwhelmed. It's changing, even going back to the example of I have so much to do, that creates a lot of overwhelm versus I
Yeah.
have things to do. That feels a little more positive. And therefore, when I'm in that place, I can think more clearly. I feel like I am a little bit more productive. And then I start spinning in a different direction, in a more positive direction, all because of words. It's all a collection of words.
Yeah. I even think have to. I have to
Yeah.
and get to, right? I
Yeah.
get to go and pick up my son from football, something he loves doing. It keeps him active, all those things. It makes you look for those um, different aspects of it, and it feels different to me. Um,
Well, it feels more, one, it makes you feel like you're a prisoner to your own life.
yeah.
Like, I have to do this.
Hmm.
Do you? Is someone holding a gun to your head telling you
Right.
to go pick up your boys?
No,
The
I could just,
reality is you're choosing to do it.
yeah.
And one, I feel like empowers you, and the other one disempowers you. It's like if you're going to do something, choose to do it because you're choosing to do it anyway.
Yeah,
So choose it with your words and your
absolutely.
feelings.
Think it does give you, it puts you in a state of like more um gratitude.
Hmm.
I've heard you talk about this like when you were washing the dishes, right? And you're like, I have dishes, I have food, I have running water, I have all those things.
Yeah.
I have to do the dishes. I'm like side-eyeing my husband who's, watching football or whatever. Instead of like I'm so grateful. This is not something that everyone has, for sure.
Right.
Uh, I'm still side-eyeing him, I'm sure at some point. But it's fine.
Totally. So it's most women in the world.
Yeah.
Get up and help. So I was thinking about today's episode, and I really wanted to give the listeners something that they can think about, something that they can use in order to begin to elevate the power of the words that they use.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be really fun for us to have them think about their lives as if they are a brand, which we all are, by the way. We all are a personal brand, a
Yes.
collection of values that we hold, the way that we see the world. But sometimes you may be unhappy with your brand because you didn't create it on purpose. It's something that just sort of happened. You're like, oh, I guess this is who I am. But one of the things that we just recently did is that we recreated the entire School of Self-Image brand guide. And part of that is we have a whole, it's like 2 or 3 pages of copy, like the words that we use, the tone that we want the tone of the company, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be fun for us to actually have the listeners to think about creating like a brand copy guide for themselves. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that is so cool because I know how helpful it is for me, right? In my lay life, right? I don't speak in the same way as I would when I'm, in soci mode or in school of self-image mode.
Mhm.
Um, so it's so helpful to me. I think it would be so fun. And it would be so interesting to explore like what would be your tone of voice? That's something that we
Mhm.
talk about. What would be some phrases that your brand would like what's your tagline? What would your
Mm.
tagline be? Like how fun is that? And I think writing it down too, it really solidifies that and makes a difference. So I think this is a super fun idea and I
Well,
love
it's
it.
really interesting because you helped create the guide. Like the whole team got together, we answered a lot of questions, but you just said something that was really interesting. You're like, this isn't me outside of work, but when you come into the School of Self-Image,
Yeah.
it's like you take that on. And
Yeah.
I think that's really powerful because a lot of women are going to be saying, but this isn't who I am. But you came in and you practiced it where now I don't have to hardly ever give you feedback. Like
Right.
you get it. You're
Yeah.
living it, you're feeling it, you're in it. And I think that's what it's like to change your tone, to change the words that you use. You repeat it over and over and over and eventually like, oh, maybe you're just thinking like Sosie when you're with your husband doing the dishes. Who knows?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's so interesting because I do, it did take a while. I mean, when we
Yeah.
first started working um here, like we had there were a lot of times where you and I were having a lot of back and forth conversation and um it was like that awkward in between, right? Like I was trying to figure out how to write and speak, in a way that was aligned with the brand. And it didn't feel natural and it was obvious, right? So I think that's an important caveat, when you're thinking about like, okay, let me create a brand guide. Maybe it's if you're wanting to change, right, where you are, it's not going to feel the greatest right at the beginning. You're not going to be like, this is seamless. This is me. It's easy. And
Mhm.
it will feel a little bit strange, maybe. And that's okay, right? Nothing is
Oh,
perfect.
and people will have things to say about it.
Oh, for sure.
People will have things to say. I think that's a really important point too. Like,
Yeah,
that's not who you are. That doesn't sound like something you would say. But eventually,
right.
over time, they're like, oh, this is
This is
just,
you.
this is you. This is what you're
Yeah.
doing now. That's so good. So, what would you, this is a fun exercise. What would you say in your life right now, if we were to read your brand guide, what would you say the tone, like 3 words, the
Yeah.
tone of your copy to yourself would be?
So I have gone through and like done, a lot of work on figuring out what my values are. And it's important. Authenticity is like so important to me. So
Mhm.
it would definitely be, authenticity. It's not that I don't sugarcoat things, but I don't ever want anyone who's speaking to me to feel like I think I'm better than them or so. Um, Authenticity is one of them for sure. Balance is another thing. Although I was listening to, I think Laura was doing a coaching call the other day, and she was talking about like how harmony feels a little bit better. So I might
Mhm.
upgrade that. Um, did you ask for three things?
I did. So we have authenticity, balance.
And trustworthiness. Like I am not out here trying to like fool people, trick people. Like I'm out here like trying to be as authentic as possible. I want people to know that they, absolutely can trust me. And, I'm just trying to create like that elusive, I shouldn't use that word. I'm trying to create that like balance in my life, that harmony in my life. And, in a way that's as authentic as possible.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
And so it's really interesting, like having those three words in front of you will then determine how you speak to yourself and how you speak to others. There's an intentionality that comes. So, part of a brand guide as well, you said it earlier, are what are the things that you want to say and be known for? Like, what are the statements that when we're around you, it's like, oh, we always know Jamie's going to tell us we can do it. Or, mine is there is no hurry, right? Like,
Yeah.
come up with your phrases.
Oh, geez. I might need your support here.
Well, you don't have to do it right now. It's
Yeah.
just something for us all to think about.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to say to yourself all of the time? What are the things that you want to say to other people and really become known for? I think that's a really interesting one. And then the opposite of that is what are the things that you rarely or never want to say?
Yeah. It's so interesting because I think that that is something we spent a lot of time on that, when we were
Mhm.
going through the brand guide. And it's just funny how, you have a 5 minute, like in-depth heart to heart. People are passionate about conversation about a single word, right? We don't
Mhm.
say X. Um, so I think those are really interesting things to think about. I feel like I need to spend some time doing the brand guide uh, project or trying that out for my own life because I think about how helpful that would be, how supportive that would feel for me. And in telling myself like how I want to show up every day, um, yeah, that just it really feels like it would be so supportive. So I love this idea that you came up with. I think that I'm hopeful, that listeners will find that helpful and, fun as well, to really
Yeah.
dig into that.
Yeah. Because I was thinking about this. I'm like, we do it for companies, we do it
Yeah.
for, brands. Why? Because there's an intentionality. And to me, I think a beautiful life is about being intentional. And we can do it for ourselves as well. I want to go through this for myself. Like, I know one of the words that I don't ever want to say is overwhelmed.
Yes.
That just never leads to a productive outcome. Never.
Yeah.
Like, I never want to say that word. So I find myself wanting to use that word, and it forces me to come up with a different word. I'm like,
Yeah.
nope, we don't say that around here. We say, my life is full right now. I have things to do right now. But
Yeah.
for me to identify as an overwhelmed woman has never, ever led to me being more productive, happier, feeling more calm, more at peace. And so that's like one word as an example that just doesn't belong in my brand guide. It just doesn't belong.
Yeah. I do notice myself saying a lot when people, how's it going? And I'm like, living the dream, that's like my go-to phrase. And I think about not only how it's the tone really, right,
Mhm.
my sarcastic tone, how that makes me feel, but I think about if my kiddos are around, like how does that make them maybe feel like I'm being sarcastic about like enjoying my life? Um, but it's sort of just like a default for me because I can be, sarcastic at times. So that's something that I definitely would like to put in the like, this is what I'll no longer say and no longer that will be my default answer. Um, I am practicing no longer saying that. Um, so I think I have to come up with an alternative for
I
that.
like living the dream,
Yeah.
but I
But
guess
see,
it's
it's your
energy
tone.
behind it.
Yeah,
right? It's always
absolutely.
the energy. If it's of sarcasm, that's very
Right.
different versus like conviction of I'm
Yeah.
living the dream. Oh,
Maybe
that's
a good.
so interesting. And when
Yeah.
everybody's thinking about their tone, when you're writing copy, there's all different types of tones. There's like empowered, there's confident, there's feminine,
Yeah.
there's, sophisticated, there's down to earth. Like, think about the tone that you want to be known for and how you communicate to yourself, more importantly, but also to other people.
Yeah.
And you can begin to train yourself in that certain tone. And I don't know. There's something about it. I just love the intentionality and knowing that we get to decide on the words that we use. We get to tell our brain how to think
Yeah.
and the words to use. And I think that is one of the most empowering thoughts because our words really are creating our lives. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's until you really stop to think about it, you don't realize that there is that connection. Um, and then when you do, it's just like it's sort of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's back to like the energy, it's back to like how you're creating evidence, how it helps you show up in your life in a way that you want it to. And you can really just make those small adjustments, like so many things. I have so many things to do. It's just getting rid of those two words.
Or even like I have, I work a lot, me and Laura both with weight loss clients, and I am so overweight.
Yeah.
So versus I am overweight
Yeah.
feels a little bit better. We don't have to put so in there. We don't have to intensify the word overweight. And then we just use the thought ladder, which is one of the tools that we teach in the School of Self-Image. But everybody pay attention to your words. Your words are creating your life and they're very, very powerful. So thank you, Jamie, for coming on the podcast. This was
Thank
so
you.
fun. I'm so glad everybody gets to meet our amazing copywriter who we
Well,
love here at the School of Self-Image.
oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And it was lovely to have this time talking to you and introducing myself to the world.
Yes. Thank you so much.
All
Take care,
right, thanks.
everybody. I'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.